Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Care Forum podcast. My name is Dr. Cedric Bachitu, your host for the hour. We bring you knowledge to empower you and address the root cause of disease. Our goal is simple. It's to interest you in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Today, we are joined by none other than Samantha Lander. Samantha found her way into the health industry through years of working on her own health. She first set goals for herself as a young athlete who participated in team sports such as synchronized swimming, water polo, and field hockey. In high school, she focused on rowing, where she was a member of the St. Louis Rowing Club and one of a team of 8 young women who were ranked nationally. Samantha Lander, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So, Sam,
Thanks
tell us a
for
little
having
bit
me.
about yourself. I especially love to know what inspired people. So, I'd like to ask you the same thing. What inspired you to get into functional diagnostics?
So for me, I've kind of been sick, like a sickly, I don't know how to describe it. Like I was sick my whole life, a high functioning sick person.
Mhm.
I mean, even when I was younger, chronic stomach problems, lots of sinus infections. So it wasn't like I got a lot of colds, but I was like, I had this underlying like exhaustion and stomach problems, but I just kind of always mustered through and felt like, oh, I guess it's normal to always be this tired and bloated and have like constipation issues. And then, as life went on, I would have bouts where it'd be better or worse. And once I became a trainer in 2006, um, or 2007, I was working out a ton and eating right. Like I had the cleanest diet ever. Like you couldn't pay me to go off my plan. And I wasn't getting any results and I was almost going backwards. So I started to put on a lot of weight. I started to get my period every 2 weeks, every week,
Wow.
always always bleeding. I had chronic diarrhea. My stomach problems were like full-fledged. I was exhausted all the time. Um, I mean, I had it all. Like I could not like lose a pound or like I was beating myself up at the gym and not like I'd work out for like hours a day thinking this is good. What the hell, counting calories and doing all the things that basic nutrition teaches you, especially even as a trainer. A lot of trainers don't even know about adrenals and all this other stuff. They just go, they're just a trainer. They don't teach you a lot about like the function of the body as far
Hmm.
as the hormonal system and gut. And then I noticed a lot of my clients, some of them would be doing the same thing I was doing and not getting results. And then some people would, and I had a lot of young girls, so they all weren't trying to get anywhere but just work out, or they were athletes. And a colleague of mine said, well, I went to this course and this guy was talking about food sensitivity testing. And
Mm.
I've been to every doctor. They just try to put me on antidepressants or birth control or do this or that. So it's like, highly, let's just give you medication. You're depressed. You don't need progesterone. You're depressed. You don't need this. You need that. And I was on a gamut of medication slowly creeping, and I didn't want to do that. And I was introduced to a food sensitivity test. And that was uh-oh, the first functional lab that I have ever run. And I came back with so many food sensitivities. I don't think it's very rare that I've seen a test actually look that bad. I think I probably had like 30 things on that lab or more. It tests for 150 items. And within the first week, I dropped 15 pounds
Wow.
and I felt pretty amazing. It gave me like a little glimpse of hope. But I was definitely not where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like I lost body fat. It just was inflammation. So a lot of people I have to explain to them like it was just like water weight. So I had so much inflammation and I had so like there was clearly some underlying infection or something going on. So I ended up eventually doing a hormone and adrenal panel and a stool test. And I had my adrenals were completely shot. I wasn't even producing any cortisol at that point. And when I explain that, when people are like, what's that mean? So your cortisol goes from sort of being really, really high when you're super stressed out. And then eventually it will be depleted because you're in that state for so long and you never really come down because life is just crazy and people are stressed out. And so I started to basically run out. And so that was extremely low. I was very estrogen dominant. So my estrogen was really, really high, creating a lot of water weight, the chronic bleeding, the inability to lose weight. And then I had a parasite and candida. So I was a mess. So a lot of underlying infections. And once I started clearing all that out, I started to have like good days. So you might know, like when you talk to people who are going through all that, or just they don't know, they're just like, man, I just want a good day.
Yeah.
I just want to feel good for a good day. And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, you need to work with me. Because I know that feeling where you just like, can I just feel good for one day and like be like in my own skin? And I started getting those days and I was like, there's something to this. It's not about just working out like crazy and doing all this other
Right,
stuff.
right.
So that's when I was like, I'm going to get certified. I need to learn everything I can all in the functional world. I am going to learn about heavy metals. I'm going to learn about mold. I'm going to learn about, the gut, healing the gut. I saw holistic practitioners that were good and some were awful. But I learned a ton. That's when I started doing my own thing.
Well, you know what? What's interesting and what I'd like to get your take on is, you did all these things that most people are told, well, if you do this, if you exercise, if you eat right, everything else works, right? But that wasn't enough for you. So it took a little bit more investigation in order to get what was at the root cause of your illness. And so I want to know, while you were doing that, were you going to conventional doctors, and what were some of the things they were telling you?
So, I went to doctors, and before I went on a ton of the medication, I got better on my own, doing the functional labs and not going on. I was on Armour thyroid for hypothyroidism, but that was the only thing I took at the beginning. And then I actually went through two really stressful events. I was getting a lot better. Um, but then I went through a breakup with a guy I was engaged to, and I got food poisoning.
Wow.
And food poisoning is the number one cause of SIBO. And also, I mean, it was great that we didn't get married, but like it's still stressful. And I had a setback. And right there, everything just fell apart again. So I always tell people, like, once you get to that state of chronic stress, it's very easy to fall back. It's kind of like you can relapse. And after that, I was running labs, working with a practitioner. I mean, I was trying it all and I really wasn't getting anywhere. And This was before I was certified to actually run the labs on myself. Um, but I was going through the course and sort of like doing all the work, but I was still working with the other guy. And that was where my big thing was, where I'm going to learn to do it on my own. So I was kind of in the process of that, but I still needed help. I still work with people on my health and try not to diagnose my own health.
Mhm.
And, my dad's Western medicine and he's a doctor and he's like, you need to go to an endocrinologist. So, and my OBGYN really had no idea what was going on. We took an IUD out. He said birth control, but I didn't want anything in my body at that point. And this is when I went to the doctor, and I feel like I'm a pretty strong advocate at this point when I could go to the doctor and what I want. And the endocrinologist put me on something called spironolactone. And that is for, it's a diuretic, but they use it for acne. I did not have acne, but it also is a testosterone blocker. So I'm now on something that they want to put me on that's going to be blocking my testosterone production. And then I was so upset, and I'm like, listen, they're like, you're just depressed. So then they write me a script for like some sort of antidepressant. And then they're like, you need to be on birth control. I'm like, all I need is progesterone. Like, I know I'm estrogen dominant. I need progesterone. I know what this feels like. I've been depressed. This is not depression. And, I'm like, why are you going to put me on this like testosterone blocker. So I started telling the doctor all these things and sort of like in more like doctor terms. And that did not go well. Very defensive. I got fired. I've been fired by her, and then she switched me. She recommended someone else. I went to them, and they fired me because were they just wanted to do birth control or like a hysterectomy. back to what my what really seems right in my gut. So follow the gut. So I went back to, that's when I, at that point, I think I started working with some functional people in town, kind of got the runaround, and then I just started, running labs and testing stuff and doing it on my own. Because at that point I was certified with everything. And sure enough, I went on some bioidentical progesterone, and things just shifted, supported the adrenals, worked on healing the gut. And eventually, like I reached my goals and felt great. So,
Wow. Wow. And that's a testimony in itself. I
yeah.
love that. What's notable about that is that you were able to stand your ground. You went in informed to the best of your abilities, and you stood your ground on what you wanted and what you thought. Because a lot of people have this fear and intimidation to bring up their thoughts or what they think, or maybe even disagree with their physician. Because I think we have this idea that, hey, the white lab coat gives you impunity, if you will. And I think one of the things that I would like to do is encourage people to educate themselves a little bit more and make it more of a conversation between them and their primary care doctors, as opposed to this being a one-way sort of I'm giving you instruction interaction. And so I think it's notable that you did, but look at the wonderful results. You were able to do a food sensitivity test, and of course, you found the root cause of your illness, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a roller coaster. I always tell people, like, you might be good for 4 years and then it falls apart, it hasn't been perfect since then, no. But I know how this is what I teach people, is I teach people to recognize the signs when things are going bad, and you run your lab, or you get back on your supplements, or you do what you have to do. I know that now, like, it always gets better. I just have to go back to, like, doing what I do with my clients on myself when I have those like health lulls. Like, it's never perfect. And I do think that Western medicine, I think that there is definitely a place for it. I'm not saying that, you know, antibiotics should never be used ever, this should never be used ever, but I think that it's nice to take caution first before you go on a lot of medicine and figure out what the root cause is. I mean, a lot of doctors don't figure that out. Like, if a doctor is figuring out the root cause and they realize, okay, this is what you need, that's one thing. I feel like, and I think when you go to the doctor, I always tell my clients, like, take someone with you. If you're worried you're not going to remember things, don't be afraid, because they probably will undermine you if you come in there with things that are highly educated about yourself. Write everything down, write all your questions down
Yes.
before you go. Take in a piece of paper. You're going to get there, you're going to forget it all. Always write everything down. And if your doctor is literally taking care of you, so I always say, do it like Bumble. It's like dating. Don't be afraid to swipe, swipe left or right or whatever it is, because if it doesn't work, just find another one. There's a million out there. You know.
Yes. Oh, yes. At the end of the day, you need to have a healthy relationship with your doctor, whoever
Yeah.
that might be. It shouldn't be a dictatorial relationship. Now, about the clients that you generally see, what are some of the more common things that you see they're struggling with? What are they coming to you for?
Um. So low libido. So I mean, I'm almost everybody has low libido that I talk to. So that one's kind of just across the board. If it's a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Even my young girls, I get that.
Wow.
Um, but it is typically, they aren't even so concerned about like the weight loss portion at this point. A lot of my clients would like to lose weight, but they're more concerned with the fact that their brain fog is so bad, or they can't remember anything, or they're severely constipated. They do not go to the bathroom, maybe every 3 days, maybe once a week. I get that one a lot. Or chronic diarrhea. It's typically some GI infection that really gets them to be like, okay, something's not right. Like,
Mhm.
I need to figure this out. So,
And so it sounds to me like a lot of your work centers around the gut and what's happening there, correct?
yep. I
Which is
look,
actually,
yep.
well, I was going to say, it reminds me of a quote by Hippocrates that all disease starts in the gut. And so you can see that the more people I talk to on this podcast, the more I see that when you look at the root cause of a lot of these chronic diseases, there's always some sort of connection to your gut and its state of health. So I think that's interesting, and I
Well,
love.
I like to use the example when people are like, no, they're like, I don't know about that. Is okay, let's say, you found out your kid got in a car accident. What's your body's immediate reaction? You feel sick to your stomach. That is a mind body, like gut connection. Like you find out news that's horrible and your stomach then is sick, you know,
Very true.
what do you, how are you going to deny that? So listening to your gut, it might not be as acute as your kid getting in an accident, but it typically will tell you something. I mean, think about when you're in love and your stomach flutters,
Yes.
or whatever it is, the stomach flutters that people talk about. You're happy, it's good, it's your
The
gut telling
butterflies in
you.
your stomach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're on a roll. I mean, I wouldn't say like a roller coaster. That obviously could be something else, but there's all these things that it's all your gut is telling you.
That's right. That's right. So one of the tools that you use with your client is food allergy testing, correct?
It's I do food sensitivity testing,
Food
so like
sensitivity
food
testing.
intolerance. Yeah, not allergy.
Okay, so tell us about food sensitivity testing. What sort of details do you get from that?
So the lab that I use, I kind of get different levels of reaction. I test for 175 different foods, and it gives me sort of like how reactive they are to each item, and then from there we're able to do like a full nutrition plan that is going to be tailored completely to the client. So you can play the guessing game all day long on what foods are good for you and bad for you, but even like myself, like I can't even necessarily pinpoint what is good and bad, or what works for my body at the moment. It doesn't mean you can't eat those foods forever, but you typically see that whatever they eat a lot of, they've created their own intolerance to. So those foods come up. Foods that are commonly used in everyday products, processed foods if their diet's not very clean. So corn, wheat, sugar, soy, cow's milk, um, eggs. Those are big ones that come up. And that's why the Whole30 works so well, because you take out, a lot of the main food sensitivities that people have just walking
Well,
around. So
and
I'm not.
I was actually gonna bring up the Whole30 because I think it's interesting. So the Whole30, if I'm correct, is essentially the elimination diet,
Well,
right?
it takes
Where you're
out.
eliminating.
Yeah, you eliminate specific foods. It's not tailored to you, it's not individualized, but it is taking out almost all the foods that I see on majority of my labs that I run. I usually see a lot more than that, but it is, those are the top six that are on a lot of labs. So you're gonna feel better and you're gonna drop weight, whether it's inflammation or actual like losing weight. It depends on the person. So some people could be coming from a very clean standpoint and then go on that. And some people could be eating crap and then starting it. So
So this seems like it's a little bit more expedient than the Whole30 because with the Whole30, you're eliminating a bunch of foods and slowly reintroducing them to see what you're sensitive to. Whereas with your approach, you're testing for all of those allergens at once. And so it. Am I correct in making that assumption that you now know which foods to avoid altogether with the food
yes.
allergen test?
Sensitivity. Yes.
Food sensitivity test, excuse me.
It's okay.
No,
Uh,
but am I correct?
yeah. It's basically doing an elimination diet totally totally like made for you. It's
Mhm.
completely individualized. So, and that's what sets it apart from doing some little like other thing that you read or fad diet. Those are not tailored to you. And they're not, it's not always that black and white. Definitely never in that area.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it's important for people to understand that the reason the gut is key or crucial to your health is because everything that enters the blood has to go through your gut. That's where the food gets absorbed. That's where the nutrients gets absorbed. That's where damage will often occur and it leaks into your blood. So we're talking about different sort of allergic reactions. So the gut is crucial to health, and I don't think people quite understand the significance of what the gut is and how it is that we can improve the gut. So let me ask you this: once you identify the food sensitivities and you generally devise a food plan or craft a food protocol for these patients, what have you noticed? What types of foods have you noticed have significant effects with helping them heal the gut?
So when I do my consult after that test, I definitely explain like leaky gut and intestinal permeability. And I talk a lot about like kind of the inflammation in their gut that's going on. But I usually try to be very clear that you have these, you never know it's the chicken or what comes first. But typically when you have a lot of food sensitivities, um, there's some other underlying factor going on. And we can eliminate all of these. It's going to reduce inflammations and it's going to give you an opportunity to start to heal the gut, but we still need to do some deeper investigation. But it also, I do a really extensive like medical history and stuff like that with the client. So it really depends on who, but what they say there. But um, I like to do at least the GI panel also, and then get rid of everything, clear out the gut, and that's where I start to heal the gut. And I use that, I do supplementation typically with that. It depends on the client, what their sensitivities are, what I give them. Some supplements will work for them, some will not. I think collagen is great, bone broth. If you just stuff on your own, bone broth is amazing. Cabbage juice is really good. There's various things that you can use to definitely help heal the gut. It just kind of depends on what they can and can't have or tolerate. And you can even start doing some activated charcoal, bentonite clay, pull out more toxins. So it really depends on the client. I do a biofilm breakdown also prior to any stool test because I think that's really important. I know there's some controversy on whether or not you need the biofilm breakdown or not with certain labs and stuff like that, but I get really good results. I'm really picky about how I have people run their stool tests. So you got to break down the biofilm in your gut. Most of us all have it, and it depends how bad it is. But it basically is the slimy coating that keeps everything in. So we're not going to really, I try to explain to it, it's like a slimy coating on the rocks in a stream. So like under that slimy coating, when it's slipping on a rock, are all the tadpole eggs and all that other good stuff that's thriving and going to go swim all over in the stream soon enough. But basically you have that in your gut, keeping all the infection and everything else and bacteria, bad bacteria, good bacteria, all in your gut. And so breaking that down will give you an opportunity when you go to do a protocol that you will actually be killing. Number one, your stool test will be more accurate because more is going to come out in your stool. And then when you go to actually do your protocols, you're able to actually try to really eradicate as much as you can because there's so many little nooks and crannies where there's eggs and there's babies and there's all parasites and all that stuff living there. So we gotta like really get in there and do it. And sometimes it happens in like an onion, like it's like layers. Like we'll get rid of one parasite and there's another one and another one just because we start to kind of clear things out. So it really kind of depends on the person. I hopefully I answered that right.
No, you did. You did. It's really significant of what is possible out there with the right approach, and just how much information that a biofilm test can give to people. And I think it's crucial because, again, like I said, most of these diseases that we call chronic diseases, I've noticed that the trend seems to be that they generally tend to have a root cause somewhere along the gut And I think a lot of people don't know that the gut is this hollow tube that begins in your mouth and sort of ends with your anus. So there's a whole lot going on in between the intestines, the stomach, the esophagus. There's a whole lot, and there are many bacteria that make up a significant component of the gut. And so maintaining their state of health is crucial to maintaining our state of health. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yes, you are very correct. There's a lot of components. I mean, just your gastric emptying time or digestion. I mean, you might have nothing going on the gut, but like if you can't digest your food properly or you're not going to the bathroom and eliminating properly, it doesn't, that's a whole nother area to work on. It doesn't necessarily, so, if things are not functioning well, there's going to be a toxic load that impacts everything in the body. I mean, just the stress alone. I mean, and then your cleansing pathways become super congested and your liver and your gallbladder don't work right. And half the people I see have had like their gallbladder removed and they're like all the stuff taken out. They're not on like they need like they can't digest fat. So there's a lot of factors that for sure play into it. That's why it's important to listen to the client and talk to them before you do anything. That's a lot of problems I see, even from good other practitioners. Like they don't listen, they don't take the time to talk about their entire life history. You know, just down to like if they were a C-section baby or breastfed, stuff like that are
Hmm.
all factors that play into a person's health. And they forget a lot. So I get a lot of emails afterwards like, oh shit, I forgot to tell you about this. And it's like, okay, and it's like you'll hear it'll be like a thing. Oh yeah, I went on, Accutane and then I went on birth control and then,
Okay.
all the stuff they did in high school that they forgot about and they didn't even think could be contributing to what's happening now. They say it gets them thinking, and then I get like all this stuff. I'm like, woo. Well, yeah, my ex-husband was a drug addict and committed suicide. I'm like that wasn't a trauma. I asked you if you had any trauma in your life. Like, but that plays a factor.
Right, it does. It does. Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned something about C-sections and children born. Are there any advantages to children born through natural birth as opposed to those born via C-section? Because I believe natural birth, they're exposed to certain probiotics, if you will, from the mother. Am I right? Certain microbes from the mother.
Yes. So, when you pass through the vaginal canal, you will basically that is when like all that mucus and all that bacteria that was coming from the mom sets up kind of the gut microbiome for that child to, the blueprint to start
Hmm.
on. Whether it's good or bad, it's still going to be, a good bacterial balance that's going to go into that child. When you're a C-section, you don't go through the vaginal canal, so you don't get that, which can lead you to possibly have, be sicker later in life, more infections, strep throat, ear infections, colicky baby, because they don't have that. They have no like blueprint for gut microbiome, so they're sort of building it as a baby. But you can do something like if someone ever knows they're gonna have to have a C-section or they want to just tell their doctor. It's called. You can look it up. You can tell them what to do. It's called vaginal seeding. And basically, they scoop out that mucus right after the baby's born and they put it before anything's done. They just put it on the eyelids of the baby, the nose, the mouth, any like areas where there's like open, and in their mouth. And that can, there's a solution to it. It's not like doesn't mean the mother is not a good mom. Some people don't like to hear all this, but it I see these kids. I see kids that are C-section babies. And breastfeeding is hard sometimes after you have a C-section. You just had an operation. Sometimes they don't get breastfed. There's babies who were vaginal birth and they've been breastfed. It goes
Right,
all ways.
right.
I'm not saying it's like you were a C-section baby, you're screwed. But I see a lot of C-section babies and you can kind of they've been on a lot of antibiotics as a kid. They've had a lot of ear infections. The ones that are really sick and coming to me, there's the ones that aren't sick aren't coming to me. That's great. But you see it and you can pinpoint it. I can.
Well, I don't think it's an offensive thing. I don't think anybody should take offense to this because you're listing facts,
Yeah.
right? I think going into the birthing process, I think it's nice to equip people with knowledge so they know both sides. And it's not to say that one has to feel bad about which path they've taken or which decision they've made, but it is to say there are advantages and disadvantages. There are benefits to come, for a child to come through the mother's vagina. And I think it's a truth that I wish more people knew. Maybe it would certainly sway them to go natural and give a natural birth. But for those who are unable to, this doesn't make them less than anything. They're still mothers just as much, but we're simply acknowledging the fact that, look, these are certain mechanisms in place that are able to benefit your child were they to be born through a natural birth. All right, Samantha, I want you to tell us a little bit about your company, Jumpstart to a Lifestyle Change. What do you mean by that?
So, so my what I as far as my company, well, it's actually CFIT Living. Um, is my company, and like SEEFIT. Um, and what I do, so I basically I can work with anyone who wants to optimize their health. So what I do is I kind of do the extensive health history with them. I found out where they want to be in 3 years or 3 months, 6 months, a year, what their goals are. Are you ready to make these? Are you committed to making these lifestyle changes? This is not a quick fix overnight thing. I work with people. I mean, I usually work with people a year, um, or more, or sometimes a little less. And I just kind of get the root cause of whatever it is that they are struggling with as far as their health. So I have different programs that I do. Some are just have a lot more accountability, a lot more sessions and consults with me, and then I have some that are not as big. But I do run labs with my clients. It's really important to me. I test, don't guess. Um, and my labs, I double blind all my labs. They're really reputable, great labs. That's kind of what I do.
Okay.
So
And
that's
so, what are the various services that you offer?
so I mean, I do personal training, but just kind of like on the side now. And I work with hormones, I work with the gut, I work with weight loss nutrition. If people have I kind of run the gamut of what kind of thing I what varieties of ailments people have that I work with, but I can run pretty much any lab. So my main ones that I run when I work almost with any client are going to do a GI panel, and they're going to do a adrenal and hormone panel, which will also test for organic acids. It's going to test for neurotransmitters. So we're going to get a full panel. It's comprehensive. We're going to look at their cortisol, a 24-hour snapshot of their cortisol throughout the day, because we want to see where the levels are all through 24-hour period, because it does change. And we also do the food sensitivity testing. So we work on the nutrition, we do the hormones and adrenals, and then we work on the gut. Some people just come in and they're like, I run a business. I'm hardcore about self-care. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a startup. I want to, be in the top of my game. Let's just do this. I'm sick of having brain fog and I'm tired. And then I have other people who are like, I can't lose weight. I feel like crap. I have chronic diarrhea. So
Mm.
kind of all over.
Well, do you get a lot of people with brain who experience burnout? Because I mean, some jobs are stressful.
Oh yeah. All of them. Being a mom, being a parent is stressful. So everybody's
Amen to
got,
that.
if you, I mean, that's the hardest job in the world, in my personal opinion. So yeah, I work with, if you consider that a job, everyone has burnout from their job for sure that I work with. And some people just want to do it. Some people actually feel great and they're super healthy, and they're so in tune with their body. They know when one little teeny thing is off and they're like, okay. So
Well, let me ask you this. In addition to um, food allergy testing, which is one of the tools that you use, do you use any sort of supplements? And if so, which supplements do you use?
can you say that again?
In addition to the allergy testing, looking at some of the tools that you use in order to treat your clients or work with your clients. Do you use do you use supplements
Yeah.
as a tool?
So we
And
work on diet, we work on rest, we work on stress reduction, um, and we work on exercise, and then we also tap into, so I call it like dress protocol. So diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. So we will do supplements. They're super clean. I'm super picky. I try to get top of the line supplements. So I have like my own online store where I kind of set them up with what the best supplements are going to be for them. Some people, we have to follow their food sensitivity test. So if like a liver supplement has beets in it, we can't use it if they're reactive to it. So it does depend on the person. But I do supplementation, not really so much with just running the food sensitivity test, but I do it with the other two for sure.
mhm.
For supplements.
Now I'd like to know what are some points that you can offer our listeners to move forward in their practice of self-care, as well as health and wellness.
So I think it's really important to eat whole foods, so the more ingredients that are on the label, the worse it's going to be for you. So if you're what I mean by whole foods, not like go to Whole Foods. Some people are like, well, I go there. Well, you can go there and get a gluten-free cookie, but a gluten-free cookie is still a freaking cookie. Okay. That's what people don't get. Oh, well, it's gluten-free. I'm like, well, it probably is worse than the regular cookie because everybody's reactive to corn. There's probably soy based, who knows? So, the less ingredients on a label, and if you can't pronounce it, then get rid of it. Try not to take, medication. Find out why you're taking it before you take it. And if there's something you can fix before you take it, then let's do that first. So if your cholesterol is high, then why don't you try making some dietary changes before going on the medication? If you're suffering from GERD, maybe you should check and see if you have H. pylori, and maybe that's why you have reflux. Maybe it's not just, GERD and reflux where you have to go on private, so it's like find out the root cause before it doesn't mean you don't need medication or whatever, and then go from there. Women, try to find a non-hormonal birth control. I think that's really important. Um, and if you do have to like take medications and do all these things, there's plenty of like at home little things you can do to cleanse your system without taking supplements because you might not know about what to take. So you can dry brush, you can do an infrared sauna. There's places all over now where they offer infrared saunas. You can do, castor oil packs. So there's plenty of things that you can do on your own, to just sort of start that self-care, and then take time for you. Don't feel guilty about doing self-care. I think that's a
Mhm.
big thing. It's like, I don't want to spend the money and I don't want to take the time, or I don't have the time, or, well, if you don't make the time, you're going to suffer later. And what better investment is your health? Like, I don't like, especially if you have kids or family or loved ones, and like, do you want to die early or do you want to be sick for half your life? Like, spending a little bit of money on the short term is going to give you long-term gains. And it's a lifestyle. I'm not going to teach someone to just, okay, let's try that. You're going to go on intermittent fasting for a month, this fad diet, try this little protocol of supplements. Like, I don't do that. It's, so.
Right, right. Well, what does working with you look like, Sam? So if someone were to call you, just walk us through some of the steps of start to finish. What would that look like? What would the process look like?
Okay, so you got to book a discovery call, and that's free. I do not charge for that. We're on the phone 45 minutes usually, or whatever we need. And that's where I do an extensive health history and I find out everything I can about you. Um, and we start from when you were born. And then from there, I sort of come up with what would be an ideal program out of the ones that I have for you. And then from there, we sign you up. You get all your labs. You get instructions on how to run all your labs. All of them, except for one, is done at your own home. So you can do them on your own time in your own home. You don't have to go anywhere. One, you just have to go get a blood draw. You can get a phlebotomist to come to your house. They have mobile ones. And Once you start running those labs, we start doing consults, and follow-ups and consults, and that's where we get going.
Well, Samantha Lander, thank you so much for joining us here on the Self Care Forum podcast and certainly enlightening us as to your holistic practice. By the way, how do we get in touch with you? Are you on social media?
I am. Who isn't in my world? I am on Instagram, and it's SEEFITPT. I mean, sorry, SEEFIT and then living. So it's CFit living, and then it's CFit on Facebook, or Samantha Lander. If you look Samantha Lander, you'll find it all off my website, which is www.cfitpt.com. But yeah, if you, and I put a lot of great helpful information on Instagram, just tips and things and discounts on my favorite health products, so people don't have to go try to find a piece of chocolate that's clean. I do all that work for you. So that's that.
Samantha Lander, I thank you so much for joining us here on the Self Care Forum podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Listen to the audio version of the Self Care Forum podcast, available on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcast.